Hello everyone, welcome to English 1-to-1. My name is Lily, and today I'm going to be talking about what I consider are the 12 most difficult English words to pronounce for Spanish speakers. Well, as we know, English isn't a walk in the park, right? But one of the aspects that the students usually struggle with the most is pronunciation. One of the reasons is, of course, that when you acquire the language as an adult, it's going to be more difficult to adapt to some of the sounds which are not natural for us. All right, and this is what happens in the case, of course, of Spanish speakers, especially because in our Spanish phonemics we have 24 phonemes. 5 are vowels, a, e, I, o, u, which is quite easy, right? We pretty much combine every consonant with that, and we have all the sounds already. And we have 19 consonants, but in English we have a total of 44 phonemes, which means it's about double of what it's in Spanish. And 24 of them are consonants, 12 of them are vowels, and 8 of them are diphthongs. As you can see, the amount of sounds that there are in English are much more than the ones that we have in Spanish. Now, actually in this part I'm gonna be talking first about some of the common problems before I go ahead and mention all of these words that I consider are difficult. Some of the common problems, of course, are that some of the letters in English has one way of being written but a different way of being pronounced. This is the case of letters like letter T, that sometimes it sounds like a D, and the other way around, letter D, which sometimes sounds like a T. There is also the letter CH together, which might sound sometimes like a letter K, like K, all right? Also, I think this is one of the most common problems that we Spanish native speakers have, which is the S at the beginning of the letter. Usually when you explain this to native Spanish speakers, it's difficult to understand, because if we take the word in English, snake, the way that we usually pronounce it is a snake. Why? Because we are not used to this sound, and we usually put an e before. So when you tell them these two words, especially and specially, students are always going to say that it's exactly the same, but it's not, right? Because there are two different sounds at the beginning of the word. Once again, the S sound at the beginning of a word is difficult to understand, or not well to understand that there is no E before an S there, and also it's difficult for us to pronounce, right? Then we also have in English what are called the silent letters, and there are not just one or two, but there are many different silent words that you're going to find in the words in English. For example, we have the letter T that can be silent, like in the word listen. All right, often we Spanish speakers, we're going to pronounce it as listen at the beginning, all right? But once again, letter T is silent in this case. Also, the letter B can be silent, like in the word plumber, all right? But we might say it plumber at the beginning. But once again, the B is silent. And the S can also be silent, like in the word island. This is actually very commonly mistaken with the word Iceland, which is actually a country. This is the reason this word is I often correct it during the lessons, because in this case, actually adding there an S is going to make a totally different word, right? Island and Iceland, which is a country. Okay, so now let's go ahead and mention what, once again, I consider are the 12 most difficult words in English to pronounce for native Spanish speakers. This is my point of view as a teacher, and of course I'm also a native Spanish speaker who of course struggle with pronunciation the same as everyone else. Okay, and of course let's not get confused about pronunciation problems and accent problems. Pronouncing correctly doesn't mean that you need to sound like a native speaker. In fact, there's a previous podcast that I made about it, right, where we explain what exactly is an accent. Okay, now the first word that I have here is the word, and this is pronounced as comfortable. Now, the mistake here often is about where the stress of the word goes. All right, a lot of times students are gonna pronounce it like comfortable, comfortable, or something else. And this is for you to understand how important is the stress of the syllable. When you stress the correct syllable, of course, you're going to sound much more natural and communication is gonna get easier, right? Comfortable. The next word has a similar situation, right? We often put the stress in a different syllable, which is the word, how do you pronounce it? Vegetable. Okay, the stress of the word it's at the very first syllable, which is a b, vegetable. Okay, the next word is actually the word that I struggle, and maybe until now I do struggle to pronounce it. Okay, I don't know why. I think this is kind of my nightmare because I always struggle with it until now that I think I pronounced it better, and this is the word unfortunately. Unfortunately, I hope I'm saying it right now. But for a very long time I was pronouncing this word like unfortunately. It was very difficult, and of course I'm going to give you some tips on how you can improve and master your pronunciation. And well, I guess this is one of the words that after following one of those tips and practicing, of course, I am now capable of pronouncing it better. I hope so. You are going to be the judges, of course. Now, the next word, it's literally. Now, at the first way I'm pronouncing it is in American English, which is literally. As you can see, the T here, as you can see, or as you can hear, the letter T sounds more like a D, right? It's like playing with your tongue inside of your mouth, right? Literally. But in British English, I believe is easier to pronounce because it's just literally. In this case, the sound, the letter T stays the same, right, with the same sound, which is T as well. Okay, the next word. Okay, often we Spanish speakers, of course, if we see vowels, we tend to pronounce all of them. So how it's often pronounced is daughter or daughter, something like this, right? However, in this particular word, it's just a very short sound, okay? And which is going to be daughter. Once again, there's going to be a difference between American English, in which they pronounce the R at the end of the word, daughter. But in the case of British English, it will sound more like daughter. Okay, so yeah, they do not pronounce this R at the end of the word, and this is why the sound just sounds like daughter. Okay, now the next two words actually are quite similar, but have a similar problem of when we see too many consonants and vowels together. Once again, we want to pronounce all of them. So we have the word throw, throw, which is, lanzar, throw, which is not. Okay, the pronunciation for this word will be through. Now, There are two things that we need to consider in this part when we make the first TH sound, okay? And this is when we need to put the the tip of our tongue in between our teeth and like kind of blow, like for example, th, th, th. So, and then we say through, through. I know, once again, we see O-U-G-H all together, and we want to pronounce it as, like, of course, we want to pronounce all of the words there, but it's much simpler than it looks, okay? Through. The next word is quite similar to it, has the same construction at the beginning, and it's going to be throughout, throughout. Okay, once again, it might look like a long word, but the pronunciation is just very short, throughout. Okay, now, as you may have noticed, when we have the letter O-U-G-H, all right, often it sounds like oo, through. But look at the following word, which is the past of the verb by. So from this previous information, we might think, oh, okay, I nailed it. Now, every time I see all of these vowel and consonants together, I'm just going to say U. And now it comes this word, boot. Okay, no, it's not. Okay. Now, this word is going to be commonly pronounced by native Spanish speakers as boat. Boat, like, you know, the small version of a ship, boat. But it's not. Okay, so attention with this word, the pronunciation should be bot, bot. Okay, now that of course sounds more British, but I do believe that is easier than the American pronunciation. The next word, it's, and of course when we see an X there, we are like, oh, how should I pronounce this word? Anxiety. What do I say? In this case, the word is pronounced as anxiety. Anxiety. Now, when we talk about the noun, it is anxiety. But when we talk about the adjective, then it's anxious. Okay? Even though there is an X also on the adjective, the pronunciation of both words, or the X in both words, is going to be different. Anxiety, anxious. Okay, now we are already getting to the last three words, and the next one is a CH word. Choir. How do we say this one? Choir. This is one of the words where CH is pronounced as a K, choir. Again, it's commonly mispronounced. And the next word is actually a word that we learned at the very beginning when we just start learning English, which is the word, and is considered the third day of the week. In this case, the letter D is going to be silent. So this is not Wednesday, but it is Wednesday. Wednesday, right? Letter D, once again, in this case, is going to be silent. Now, I added actually these two, well, not two words, but to talk a little bit about all of the regular verbs which end with an ed. And of course, we, again, Spanish speakers, we do pronounce all the vowels in a word. So when we see words such as this or this, we're going to say talk it, listen it, all right? But in this case, the E is going to be silent. So we're going to have talked, listened, okay? Now, I'm not going to talk about the rules of regular verbs or all of the words that actually that end on ed, which also include some adjectives, of course. So in this case, all we need to remember is that often the E is going to be silent when there is a T or a D before the ED. For example, wait in the past will be waited. In this case, yes, we do pronounce the ED at the end. Other than that, if you do not see a T or a D before the ED, then definitely the E is going to be silent. Okay. All right. So those are the words that I consider are the most difficult to pronounce. But of course, I believe there are many others. You guys can let me know which is a difficult word for you to pronounce. You probably have another list or maybe some other words to add to this one. Some of the tips that I would like to give you on how to improve the pronunciation is, of course, listening to music. Listening to music, podcasts, or watch TV series and movies is going to be one of the best ways to not only improve your listening skills but also your pronunciation skills, because of course you are exposing yourself to the language, and through repetition of them you are going to be helping this difficult skill to improve. Now, also while listening to these different TV series or movies, there are some students who practice shadowing. Shadowing means imitating the sounds pretty much, right? For example, you play a movie and then there is part of the speech, right? And you just pause the movie and then you try to repeat it, and then you do it several times. And this is actually one of the most natural ways to learn, because this is how kids do it, right? Kids at the beginning, they just listen and they repeat, they imitate what they hear, all right? And this is the reason why shadowing is one of the most effective ways to improve pronunciation. But of course, you need dedication in order to do that. Now, another way is, of course, having an English coach, which is often to help you, give you an outside perspective, because sometimes we do not understand, we do not realize exactly which is our mistake, or what are we doing wrong, and how can we improve that. All right. So, of course, having an English coach is a good alternative. And the last tip that I could give you is forget about sounding silly, because especially at the beginning, when we just start learning the language, there are sounds that we are kind of forcing ourselves to make, and that they are not natural for us, the same as the intonation that we use when pronouncing the words. In the case of Spanish, it's more like flat, I would say, or flatter. And often when we talk in Spanish, the sounds just come from our mouth to the outside, right? But when you speak in English, and this is actually one tip that I could hear in one video from one English teacher, native teacher, and they said that for native speakers, what they do is like in English, the sounds or the words do not come from this area, but they come from the throat. This is the reason why often English will sound more like this, right? Like, I don't know, deeper. And that's because the sounds are not coming from here, like flat sounds are coming from like deep part, right, of our throat. And of course, a pronunciation, once again, I'm not an expert, but this is what I could learn through the years. Pronunciation is going to depend a lot on the position of your tongue, the position of your lips, how you position your mouth, you open it, you close. And of course, if you want to practice by yourself, you need to kind of imagine that your mouth is not here but here, like you close your eyes, and like, in that way you're going to start helping the pronunciation, and maybe the English sounds are going to become easier and easier for you to master. All right. Well, okay, so just as a last quote, mispronunciation should not be a barrier for you to continue learning the language, because at the beginning it's going to be difficult for everyone. And like I said before, just don't care about sounding silly. It's a process as everything. But well, I hope some of these tips can help you the same way it did help me as well. All right, so thank you very much, guys, for coming all the way to this part together with me, and I will see you the next time. Bye-bye.